It is the year of faith, and many of us have taken the whole year to think a lot about our faith. But I think that most people never think about faith. It's not even on their radar because of whatever reason. Some people have had faith and have gone through periods where their faith, they've struggled, it feels weak, it feels fragile. There's a new book now for those people and for those people who want to help those people. And it's a book by Father Scott Hurd called When Faith Feels Fragile. And to talk more about this subject and to tell us more about his book, I am now joined by Father Scott.
Thank you for having me on the program.
Father
Very grateful.
Scott Hurd, back on the program because you were on the Salt and Light Hour before speaking about your book Forgiveness. When Faith Feels Fragile, Help for the Weary, Weak, and Wandering. Okay, all the alliteration aside,
that's right.
When faith feels fragile, the weary, the weak, and the wandering. Why? Who are these people?
All of us, at certain points of our lives. Just 2 weeks ago, our Holy Father, during his Angelus address, spoke of the fragility of faith.
Right.
And he wasn't directing those words, I think, to a specific subset of the church. It's something that all of us experience at certain points along our spiritual journey.
So at times we can all be weary, weak, and wandering, or are there people who are wanderers and people who are...
Well, maybe we could pick one of those. Sometimes we're weary, sometimes we're weak, sometimes we're one. Maybe not all three at the same time.
Weakly wandering.
But, yes.
So, why write this book? Why? What journey were you on
Right.
that made you write this book?
Sure. Well, in pastoral ministry, people share their lives with you and their faith struggles. And after a while, you come to really appreciate how difficult it is to be a person of faith at times. And that's been my experience as well. So in writing a book like this, okay, I'm preaching to myself, and hopefully this is reflective of my experience in serving the people of God.
So, and I agree with you, because absolutely in pastoral ministry, these are the conversations that we most often have with people. Call it doubt, or call it unbelief, or call it struggles with particular church teaching, or anger at that one priest who did whatever when I was, having my first communion. All that contributes to a weak faith.
All of those factors, and we may not experience all of them, but everything you just enumerated can contribute to people feel like they're just kind of hanging on by a thread in their faith commitment.
So now, this is a bit of an obvious question, because I think you and I know the answer. Why is it important? Why is it important? I mean, if my faith is just hanging by a thread.
I think it's helpful at one angle to reassure people that if they feel their faith is hanging on by a thread, it's not the end of the world, okay? Many people have experienced this, and it can get stronger. And so I hope to offer some hope.
So, but I guess that my struggle is that this sort of assumes that people want something better.
But don't we all? Maybe even not consciously, but deep down, we're hardwired by God to have a relationship with Him.
So someone who's let's say an outright atheist, I'm angry at the church, or I don't believe in God, or whatever. Can we look at that person and say that's a fragile faith, or that's an absent faith? Is it the same thing? And how is that different than someone who went through a horrible illness and they're doubting?
Sure. Someone who is a professed atheist, I think it's fair to say there's probably an absence of faith there.
Yeah.
But at the same time, deep down, there is a hunger for something more.
Okay.
But someone who maybe is angry at the church, or they're going through doubts, there is faith, but the foundation is a little bit shaky. So two different categories of people, but there is a common denominator.
Right, in the sense that they need strengthening.
That's right.
Strengthening.
Yeah.
So what are some factors that might contribute to people's faith feeling fragile?
Sure. Well, you mentioned several of them earlier. Anger at the church is one. Wrestling with doubts about what the church teaches. Suffering in their life can lead people to question the goodness of God. And sometimes we just get distracted. Okay. We're so busy, we're so consumed with other things that time for faith matters seems like a luxury.
Right.
Yeah, and not a priority.
Right. Okay, so that's probably a lot of people in our cities, North America. Too much driving around, kids to this place and that place, and
that's
work,
right.
And not making faith a priority.
That's right. That's right. And so making faith a bit more of a priority, as much as we can, is certainly one prescription to strengthen our faith.
Yeah.
Perseverance is a biggie. You know, even if we don't feel like God is active and present in our life, if we don't feel like making time for faith matters, keeping on doesn't sound very exciting.
No.
But it's essential.
Yeah. So perseverance.
Right.
It's not unlike an athlete that has to persevere, even though they might not feel that they're getting anything out of it.
St. Paul mentions that quite often in his letters. There's a lot of parallels between athletic training and the spiritual life. But in addition to that, I think it's important for us to recognize that God is present and active in our life 24/7. Every situation, every circumstance, that's right. And can we make an intentional effort to see the hand of God all around us? You got to work at it. But if you work at it, the fruits, the benefits are immeasurable.
Right. So, what about people who feel that their own faith is fine, strong, but their husband or their child or a loved one, a parent, that they see them struggling? What are some practical things that person can do?
Sure. It's interesting you mention that, because going around talking about this book, many older adults, I have discovered, are buying this for their adult children who don't seem to be practicing the faith. And so I hope that some hearts are opened by what's in here. But certainly for those persons, we can take hope and inspiration from St. Monica, who for years persevered in prayer for her son, St. Augustine, through his winding his way through life back to Christianity, and also to be a witness themselves.
Right, a quiet witness.
Absolutely, absolutely. Not trying to cram it down their throats, but the serenity of a strong faith the Lord can use in a very powerful way to open the hearts of others, including adult children who may have wandered away.
I heard an expression recently that I don't think I had heard it before, but it said, get to know God while you're well, because you're going to need Him when you're not well.
Absolutely, yeah.
But a lot of times we wait until we're not well, and then we're just struggling. Scrambling.
We need to be brought to our knees before we're willing to get on our knees, and it's in those circumstances that God's invitation to give our lives to Him is heard the loudest. But do we really want to wait till we find ourselves in the foxhole before we cry out to Him?
That's true.
Yeah.
Something else, you just reminded me something else I heard recently, and it said that God would rather you be anywhere in debt court or in the hospital than be in a place of non-relationship with God.
Because He loves us.
Yeah. And sometimes that horrible, trial that you might be going through, or that divorce, or that hospital, is better. That's difficult.
What did C.S. Lewis say? God whispers in our pleasures, but He shouts in our pains, and sometimes He will shout to get our attention.
Yes.
But He'd prefer not to, I think.
Well, this book is not quite shouting, but it's definitely there for anyone, not just the weary, weak, and wandering, but anyone who wants to strengthen their faith. Don't wait until it's fragile to strengthen it. It's something that we need to continue doing. Father Scott Hurd is a priest with the Archdiocese of Washington, and he's the author of When Faith Feels Fragile, Help for the Weary, Weak, and Wandering. He's also the author of Forgiven,
Forgiveness.
Forgiveness.
A Catholic approach. Yes.
Forgiveness, a Catholic approach. We actually did that interview last year. So that's why I'm not thinking about it. And this book, When Faith Feels Fragile, is available through Pauline Books and Media at pauline.org. That's it. And then I'll